Huge news coming out overnight. Apparently, Jeffrey Epstein was found semi-conscious in his jail cell last night. And while semi-conscious is better than unconscious, and unconscious is better than dead, Jeffrey Epstein, it would appear, went through some sort of an ordeal. And if things had gone a little bit worse last night for him, he may not have been able to stand trial. Now, of course, this instantly led a lot of people to jump to the conclusion that, hey, the Clinton death list is real. He just got Seth Riched. He just got Vince Fostered. He just got suicided. And, of course, it is understandable that there are many powerful people around Epstein who Epstein may or may not be able to take down with him, whether he's telling the truth or not. As the captured leader of an international pedophile ring, he really could implicate anyone he wants in his whole operation, and that would be enough to certainly discredit a large number of people who may or may not have actually been involved in his whole operation. And I don't say this to somehow imply that the powerful people like Bill Clinton or Ehud Barak had nothing to do with Epstein's pedophile ring. I have no idea. All I'm saying is that there's a very broad circle of people who would want Epstein dead, who have reason to want him dead, and that includes more than just the people who were his fellow pedophiles. And of course, as we've seen in the past, it's not exactly far-fetched for someone to be assassinated in a American prison, or in this case a jail. If somebody's not in a maximum security setting and they are a high-profile target like this, odds are they're going to get whacked. We saw this happen to old Whitey Bulger. Whitey Bulger was murdered, assassinated during a transfer. He was in a lower security prison for a few hours, and in that time, they were able to kill him. Now, of course, we have no evidence that whatever happened to Epstein was an attempted assassination. However, the police are apparently questioning another inmate, so they do think that it's possible that Epstein was attacked. And this man goes by the name of Nick Tartaglione, I believe is how you say it, which, if that doesn't sound like a mob name, I don't know what does. But apparently he's an ex-cop from Orange County who murdered 4 people and buried them in his front yard. Now, Mr. Tartaglione says that he had absolutely nothing to do with whatever happened to Epstein, and he didn't see anything. And from what I read, even though it still seems like an assault was certainly a possibility, considering Epstein's high profile, the police seem to be leaning towards this was an attempted suicide. Epstein was found on the ground in a fetal position, which to me would seem to indicate that he was, attacked and was in pain, and that's why he was on the ground. But they said they found marks, quote, around his neck, and, so people are speculating that perhaps he tried to hang himself, but in case you folks don't know, in prison they go to great lengths to make sure you can't hang yourself, because that's what everyone who's suicidal in prison tries to do. People used to take their shoelaces and fashion them into a noose and try and hang themselves that way. So what is it that Epstein had that he could have hung himself with? You're not supposed to have anything. You have slip-on shoes. You don't have any strings. It doesn't, that doesn't make sense to me. Seems much more plausible that somebody tried to strangle him. And of course, if he hung himself, why would he be on the ground in a fetal position? That's not really, if you fail at hanging yourself, that's not normally how you would be found. And it's unclear whether Epstein has a cellmate, and if he does, it's probably this Tartaglione guy. But if Epstein does have a cellmate, how would that person not have seen him try to hang himself or be strangled by somebody? On the other hand, if Epstein did not have a cellmate, how would they even consider the possibility that this was an assault? It would clearly be a suicide. If Epstein was locked up in a cell by himself, and all of a sudden you find him, with marks around his neck, semi-conscious, you would think he tried to kill himself. So there's a lot we still don't know, obviously. But something we do know is that apparently Epstein is still alive at the moment, although the account on Twitter, An Open Secret, you folks might be familiar with that. They made a documentary called An Open Secret. they're into all this, underground sex abuse. They are now saying that they have a source which is saying that Epstein's condition is currently far more severe than it's being publicly reported. Now, they did not say that their source says that Epstein is dead or anything, just that he's in pretty bad shape. Now, again, we have no idea. This is an unconfirmed report. This is a leak, essentially. It's no better than a rumor, but it is something. Back to what may have happened to Epstein. Even if he was in fact assaulted by somebody, it wasn't necessarily an assassination attempt, plotted by someone from outside of prison who was trying to take out Epstein before he spilled the beans on who was involved with his international pedophile ring. It very well may have just been that, as is typical in prisons, if you are familiar with at least American prisons, on the food chain of folks within the prison system, pedophiles are on the bottom rung. They are considered, the worst of the worst. And so therefore everyone in prison looks down on pedophiles and thinks, even the mass murderers look down on a pedophile and say, hey, at least I didn't touch a kid. So pedophiles often get beat up in prison. Pedophiles don't have many friends in prison except for other pedophiles. So Epstein may have just been beaten up because he's such a high-profile pedophile. Now, the most recent news we have on this story is that Epstein has now been placed on suicide watch, and that tells us two major things. One, Epstein is apparently alive, and two, he would be somewhat conscious if they have him on suicide watch, because that means that he is capable of taking his own life. So he can't be in that bad a condition. He's not on the brink of death currently, at least this suicide watch classification or status would seem to indicate that that is not the case. And I'm probably the 1,000th person this morning to make this recommendation, but obviously Epstein should be in a maximum, high security prison where nobody can touch him until he's able to really sing like a canary, as the mobsters would say. Epstein needs to be protected just long enough for him to expose the rest of his gang. That is what I think will actually bring closure and maybe give us some sort of justice out of this whole situation. So if you gained anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and subscribing. And if you do subscribe, please do click the bell, because I do upload every day and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.